What's up, investors? It's the Russian Dad. Let's talk about one of the most expensive illusions of stability inside the Russian Federation. Chechnya. A place that's officially loyal to Moscow, parading its allegiance through parades, portraits, propaganda, but beneath the surface everything screams temporary. The Kremlin wants you to believe that the Chechen Republic is a loyal ally, tamed after 2 brutal wars and integrated to the Russian state. But if you follow the money, you will see that this loyalty is not loyalty at all. It's just a financial transaction. Of the books, of the records. Obviously, every ruble that flows into Grozny is another bribe disguised as federal aid, another silent payment to keep the North Caucasus quiet. This is not patriotism, this is business. And like any business, it only lasts while the money keeps coming. The second these payments stop, the whole constructions that Putin spent decades building will collapse like a house of cards under the heavy rain. So today, let's dig deep into the real cost of Chechnya's loyalty, how much Moscow spends to buy peace, why it became addicted to paying these subsidies, and what happens when those billions can no longer be spent. Because let's face it, loyalty bought with money is nothing but a rental agreement. Let's start with the numbers, because in Russia numbers do tell the story that propaganda tries to bury. Numbers do not lie. Chechnya receives one of the largest per capita subsidies in the entire country. Around 80% of the republic's budget comes straight from Moscow. Just think about it, 8 out of every 10 rubles spent in Chechnya are not earned there. Not much is produced there, and definitely not much is given in return. Rubles are wired in from the federal central, extracted from taxes paid by people in Moscow, Ekaterinburg, Novorossiysk, and funneled to Grozny under the label of federal assistance. But, well, let's call things by their real names. These are not subsidies, these are protection payments. Because the Kremlin knows one simple truth. Chechnya is calm only as long as the money keeps flowing. This peace is not maintained by love for the Russian flag or faith in Putin. It's maintained by contracts, construction, projects and cash transfers. Every year billions of rubles go into rebuilding the republic. Projects that never end because, well, they never meant to. Grozny city towers were built not to solve a housing crisis, but to display Moscow's generosity. New mosques, highways and government buildings, all of them standing as monuments to how much it costs to keep one region from exploding. And well, you can bet that every project ends up under companies connected to Ramzan Kadyrov's clan and his friends. Who would have thought, right? The irony, most of that money never reaches ordinary Chechens. Poverty remains insane. Youth unemployment is through the roof. Many people still rely on federal benefits or clan-based loyalty networks just to survive. So in essence, the Kremlin is paying billions not to help Chechens live better, but to keep one man and his personal army loyal. Let's talk more about this one man in our next chapter. That one man is of course Ramzan Kadyrov, the son of a warlord who once fought against Russia and now somehow became the Kremlin's loudest defender. His transformation from rebel to loyalist is the best example of how money can rewrite identities. But did it really transform Kadyrov? That is the question. After his father Ahmad Kadyrov switched sides during the Second Chechen War, Putin saw an opportunity. He realized that brute force alone could not keep the region under control. He needed someone who could speak the local language, not Russian, but the language of power, fear and pride. Ramzan was young, ruthless, ambitious and above all controllable as long as he was paid enough. Since then, Kadyrov has been treated not as a regional governor, but as a feudal lord. He rules Chechnya like his own personal kingdom. His men patrol the streets, his face is on every wall, his word is law. And Moscow does not complain, because as long as Kadyrov says, "I'm loyal," Putin just sleeps better at night and, well, good nights for Putin are priceless. You cannot put a price tag on that. But this loyalty has a price and most certainly an expiration date. Over the years, Chechnya has received hundreds of billions in subsidies, reconstruction funds, and so-called special allocations. In return, Kadyrov provides two things: silence and spectacle. Silence because no large-scale rebellion happens on his watch. Spectacle because every time Putin visits, Grozny is transformed to a theater set, filled with loyal crowds chanting his name. However, the deeper you look, the more this deal looks like a hostage situation. Kadyrov's loyalty is not love, it's leverage. He knows the Kremlin cannot afford to lose him. He knows that without his control, the North Caucasus could spiral into chaos again. And so, every time Moscow hesitates or delays payments, Kadyrov reminds them, subtly or not, but just reminds them about how fragile this peace really is. If there is one single man in the entire planet who can dictate the rules to Putin, it would be Kadyrov. But how much exactly money are we talking about? And what are they being spent on? Let's talk specifics in our next chapter. From an economic perspective, Chechnya is a financial black hole. Year after year, the federal budget bleeds money into the republic with almost no return. Officially, this is justified as post-war reconstruction. But I mean, come on, 2 decades later, the war excuse does not work anymore. What exactly is being rebuilt after 20 years of rebuilding? Just even take a look at Grozny, the capital. It's like Dubai of Russia at this point. Even with enormous stealing, they were able to significantly modernize the capital and make it even look pretty. Well, now to specifics. In 2024, Chechnya's federal subsidies reached nearly 100 billion rubles, for a population of over just 1.5 million people. That's roughly the same amount received by entire regions, like the Urals and Siberia combined. Even though those areas do produce oil, gas and minerals that feed Russia's budget. And that's not all. The Kremlin funds not only Chechnya's civilian administration, but also its massive security apparatus. The so-called Kadyrovцы, Kadyrov's loyal paramilitary forces, are paid, trained and equipped largely with federal money. They operate both inside Chechnya and abroad, from Ukraine to Syria, acting as Putin's unofficial muscle. So while ordinary Russian hospitals crumble and teachers across the country earn less than bus drivers, Moscow continues pouring gold into Grozny. The question is, why? Because it fears what happens if it stops. The last thing Putin wants is for Chechnya to remember that its loyalty is very optional. But even this system has limits. Russia's economy is bleeding from sanctions, war costs and budget deficits. As Moscow's resources shrink, the cost of maintaining this special relationship becomes unbearable. Putin may keep promising financial stability, but numbers do not lie. When you have a country fighting a trillion-ruble war and a collapsing economy, there is only so much money left to throw at feudal loyalty programs. And when those transfers start shrinking, you can bet Kadyrov will notice first. Because unlike the average governor, his loyalty is tied directly to his bank account. So, what happens when the money stops? When Moscow can no longer afford to bankroll Grozny's lavish projects, its militias, or its leaders' extravagant lifestyle? That's precisely when we will see how deep this so-called loyalty really goes. Chechnya's political stability is not built on national unity, it's built on dependence. Dependence on subsidies, on the Kadyrov clan, and on the single unspoken deal between Grozny and Moscow. The moment that deal breaks, the entire balance collapses. We have already seen small cracks forming. These are whispers of dissatisfaction inside the Chechen elite, quiet discontent among younger men who see absolutely no future in a system where everything depends on one family. For now, they stay silent because Kadyrov's control is absolute. But history shows that absolute power lasts only as long as the money keeps people fed and the guns stay pointed in the right direction. And the biggest evidence of fake loyalty was once again Prigozhin's Wagner mutiny, believe it or not. Yeah, once again we're gonna speak about it. Because it uncovered so many cool things, let's call it like this. When Moscow had to recruit whoever they had left under their command, almost no one came. The Chechens did respond, kind of, but conveniently got stuck in the traffic, as you all know. As you can see, even when the real trouble begins, the Kremlin will most likely not be able to count on Chechnya's support. Yet, they still keep paying them billions and billions and billions and billions. And here's the catch. Kadyrov's personal rule is inseparable from his personality. The Kremlin built this system around him, not around Chechnya. When he eventually leaves the scene, whether through illness, death or defiance, Moscow will be left with nothing but a vacuum. There is no second Kadyrov waiting in the wings who can command the same loyalty or fear. And that is precisely when the region's old ghosts will return. Some of you guys might say, what about Ramzan's son, Adam? But do you really think he commands the same level of respect and fear as his father? Well, surely not. Chechnya's people are proud, independent, and deeply aware of their history. They have not forgotten, neither forgiven these two wars, the mass bombings or the humiliation of occupation. Many remain quiet not because they do love Russia, but because they know the cost of speaking up. But when Moscow can no longer afford to pay for silence, those memories will resurface. And when they do, no amount of Kremlin propaganda will help. You cannot bribe an entire nation forever, simply saying. The truth is, the so-called peace of Chechnya is one of the most expensive myths in Russian history. It is literally a pyramid scheme of loyalty built on subsidies, fear and opportunism. Putin bought quiet with money, thinking he could maintain control indefinitely. But loyalty purchased is not loyalty owned. Every ruble sent to Grozny is a payment for borrowed time. And as Russia's war in Ukraine drains the economy, the Kremlin is rapidly running out of that time. Chechnya's stability does not rest on ideology or fate, it rests on cash flow. Once that flow stops, Moscow will learn that every empire eventually learns. You cannot buy a peace, you can only rent it. And when the rent is overdue, the tenants will speak up, not with invoices, but with fire. Because no matter how many billions Putin pays, he will never truly own Chechnya. He only rented its silence. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more news like this. If you wish to support our work and help us stay independent, there are links down below, for example, PayPal, donations and Patreon memberships. Thanks for watching, see you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.